Good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Shania Harris, and I am the Deputy Director of Curatorial and Academic Affairs, as well as the Larry D. and Brenda A. Thompson Curator for African American and African Diasporic Art. I'm thrilled to introduce tonight's lecture and to welcome you to the museum as a part of this fall's programming. Before I continue, I'd like to thank the Terra Foundation for American Art, whose generous support through their Collections in Residence program made this event possible tonight. Their commitment to highlighting often underrepresented perspectives in American art is vital to the work we're doing here at the museum. So our special artist lecture will be done by Tokie Rome-Taylor, who is a wonderful artist, Atlanta-based artist, who we've been interacting with and collaborating with over the last few years in conjunction with our Collections in Residence program. As many of you have already seen, or if you haven't, in the H. Randolph Holder Gallery, we're fortunate to have an installation by Tokie, whose work is currently in conversation with several colonial portraits from our collection. Instead of the traditional chronological arrangement of artworks, this gallery now features Taylor's photographic and mixed media works alongside portraits like that of John Singleton Copley's Portrait of a Lady in a Blue Dress on loan from the Terra Foundation. Taylor's works are also joined by recent contemporary interjections from other artists such as Gray Coho and Kent Monkman, inspiring new narratives and perspectives about the history of American portraiture. Tokie Rome-Taylor's work is an exploration of identity and representation through photography and mixed media assemblage. Her subjects, primarily children, remind us of the importance of belonging and how deeply this sense is shaped in childhood. In her most recent work, she incorporates family heirlooms, fine fabrics, and materials rich in cultural history to evoke connections across time. By re-examining history, she counters the often stereotypical and subjugating depictions of people of color in traditional portraiture, elevating her subjects in ways that combat historic erasure. Her images, layered with beading, embroidery, and West African influences, calls us to reconsider the history of portraiture itself. The visual dialogue between her work and So I Stepped Forward and Discovered, for example, and Copley's Portrait of a Lady in a Blue Dress in the gallery speaks directly to who is often included in history and who is not. It's an invitation to look anew at both the art and the narratives behind the art. Tokie has been on campus since yesterday and has visited with several students and faculty in classes and studios at the Lamar Dodd School of Art, which we're really grateful for her time and her expertise that she shared. She is an engaging personality, and her love for her practice as an artist is very evident. We are incredibly fortunate to have Tokie Rome-Taylor here with us tonight to share her insights and creative process with us. Please join me in welcoming her.
Thank you so much. I'm listening to the introduction. I'm like, oh, wow, that sounds so wonderful. Oh, yes. Who is this person? Oh, wait, she's talking about me. Thank you. Thank you so much. I will jump right in. A little adjustment. And I will start off with a quote from Toni Morrison, which I feel is indicative of the work that I do. Writers will often give us the words for what we are doing and visualizing, but we haven't conjured the words yet. And Toni is an amazing writer, was an amazing writer. And so she gives us these words. On the basis of some information and a little bit of guesswork, you journey to a site to see what remains were left behind and to reconstruct the world that these remains imply. What makes it fiction is the nature of the imaginative act, my reliance on the image, on the remains, in addition to recollection, to yield up a kind of truth. The site of memory, by definition, is distinct from fact. Presumably, it's the product of imagination, invention, and it claims the freedom to dispense with what really happened, or where it really happened, or when it really happened. And nothing in it needs to be publicly verifiable, although much in it can be. Toni Morrison. My intent with my work is not to recreate history. I don't claim to be a historian, I'm an artist. And so I really am looking at the possibility of what history could have been. What would it have looked like if we were all valued in a space, if all of our stories were of worth to be told? That's what I'm really looking at when I create my work. I'm looking at value, not in the sense of monetary value, but what do we value across cultures, across a people? We value family. We value culture and traditions. And if that is so, then it is for me to look back at my culture, my traditions, and my history while interjecting a bit of imagination with the memories that I am weaving together. I get asked a lot, why children? Why children? Why Black children? You only do Black children. Or do you only do Black children? And the strangeness of the question doesn't hit the speaker's ears because no one has ever said to that person, why is your artwork about Caucasian people? Why is your artwork about Asian people, Native American? We can only speak to our experiences. And so my experiences is that of a Black girl in the South who did not know her history. I did not know because it was not valued at the time that I grew up. I grew up in Atlanta, born and raised. I have a twin sister. Ooh, knock on wood, Sasha be all right. I have a twin sister. I have a twin sister and I have twin brothers, and my mom was a single mom. And so our experiences were shaped by being given and hand-me-downs. Other people's things that they discarded, it was a treasure hunt for us to get this giant garbage bag of things that other people had discarded. And so thus, I have a love of the discarded, of what people think are valueless are super valuable to me. As an Atlanta public school graduate, and now an educator in Atlanta public schools, when I was growing up, they would take us to the High. And it was a joy because I've always loved art. But when I got there, what you saw were landscapes upon landscapes of landscapes that did not look like the landscapes I would see if I left the building. I did not see not a single figure that I could connect to. And so what should have been a joyful experience, an adventure as an artist child was boring. And what that does, whether you know it or not, is create this subconscious thought process of, well, if the museum is where people place what they value, what they think a culture should hold on to, if this is the place, because this is, they took us to the place. If this is the place and I don't see me and I don't see anything that I can connect to, am I of value? Should I be here? Am I out of place? Am I the other? And so in creating the work in this present time, foundational to that has always been addressing that. And in Why Children, I have 5 kids of my own, God bless, and I've always been an educator. Like I left school and went right back to school as a teacher. And so I want to make sure that they don't experience what I experienced. So that is the reasoning for Why Children. As far as my thought process, I'm very, I'm very much a thinker. Before I can make work, I have to come up with the questions that relate to the work. And so those questions stem from ethnographic and historical research. I'm probing material, spiritual, and familiar culture of descendants of Southern slaves. They are my entry points for me to build symbolic elements that communicate a visual language. For the reclamation body of work, I was examining the sitter's family heirlooms, recollections of family history, combined with my historical research about the lives of Africans brought over to the Americas. Before I continue, I'll speak briefly to the image that you're looking at. This is my daughter Zoe. I, of course, use my own children within the works, but it's called Across Oceans and Land. And what you see on the left-hand side is the coastline of South Africa. Her father, his lineage is South African. On the right-hand side, you see archival photograph of my mother in the middle, as well as my aunts, both of whom have since passed on, and they are now ancestors. And you see the offering plate with the mirror, the cotton, and the cowrie shells, as well as the mother of pearl buttons. And that is an offering for her to not only see herself, but also look back at the past. And so this is my family lineage done by me, but for her, and she always will have this image to connect back to that family history. If you saw individuals back in the day in a painting, Black individuals, people of African descent, they were there as object. They were there not because they were valued as a person, they were there because of the value they represented. The person could acquire them, as well as the Venetian glass, as well as the expensive peonies or expensive whatever. It was a demonstration of their ability to acquire, not because they valued the person in and of themselves. This piece is done by Basil, and it's literally there. She is literally there because she's valued as an object and as a part of commercial exchange, not for herself. So for me, our bodies are artifacts. I look at artifacts, and then a part of that is the body in itself is an artifact. You are a container, a vessel of all those who have come before you, their DNA. I believe in memories being passed down. I believe in experiences being passed down. I believe that those who have come before us, if we reach out to them by keeping their memories alive, we stay connected to them. So we in and of ourselves are artifacts. Within the work, I'm utilizing symbolism. Part of the symbolism I'm utilizing is through the use of lace, feathers, vessels, beads, halos, and buttons. And this is in the gallery space currently. And so I stepped forward with the detail shot. And within the details shot, you see the line of cowrie shells as well as the mother of pearl buttons. I'll explain the mother of pearls later, but as far as the cowrie shells, if you know anything about African culture, cowrie shells are utilized or were utilized as a means of money. They were also utilized to adorn. They're used for ceremonial practices as well. And so I'm pulling all of those things in to have conversation with the fact that right now we exist in the Western world. But what did my ancestors hold on to? There's this blending of cultures that had to happen so that you don't break. In this particular image, I enjoy blending vintage photographs with my photographs and the background. This particular image has an archival image of Zulu warriors, and the piece is called A Rebirth. The family that this young man is from, when I spoke with her, and they're family friends, I said, hey, what's y'all's family story? Because casual, right? She said, girl, we got nothing. All we came from, and this is the conversation, right? She said, girl, we got nothing. We came from nothing, hard scratch, hard work. I don't know what to tell you, Tokie. She said, we are right now, though. Both of them, his mother and his father, are highly educated. And so he knows nothing, literally nothing about hard scratch. He knows nothing about lack. And so the piece becomes a rebirth. This is a ostrich egg with the big 6 on it that my husband brought back from South Africa. And I just looked at it and I was like, oh, this would be ideal to hold this conversation about a rebirth of your lineage and the narrative that your family tells. She did not have any family heirlooms. And so one of the components of the work is if they have not, because they either moved frequently or they just did not have the ability to hold on to things. We identified artifacts because at the end of the day, for me, the artifact is the ability to take the story and hold the story. And so the art piece in and of itself becomes a family artifact. This young lady, their family, they've been in the South for generations. And as her mother told me, she said, oh, I think we have the deed to the property down south that my great, 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 I have to count on my fingers, great, 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 great grandparent, my grandfather, he was able to hold on to the land despite folks trying to get it from him. And we have the land and we'll be growing pine trees on it, Tokie, as a family business. I'll get the deed for you. She couldn't find the deed, but what she did do is drive down, pull the pine cones from the land, and that became their artifact to represent that ability during that time when folks were losing land left and right through violence, they were able to hold on. So I am always researching. I'm always looking for inspiration. That was a part of the conversation with the studio visits today and yesterday. Where do you come up with your ideas? What is the process behind what you're doing? Clearly, I'm looking at family stories. I'm looking and examining African spiritual practices and the overlap with Christianity and how that blends together with this body of work. I'm also looking at historical and archaeological accounts of how people who were kidnapped from Africa, how did they survive and maintain? And I'm looking at heirlooms and memorabilia. And when in doubt, read. I love a good writer. As I said, I've already provided you with a wonderful quote from Toni Morrison. I love Toni Morrison, Octavia Butler, whom I was reading at the age of 9, and I doubt I should have been reading Octavia at the age of 9, but my mother didn't care because reading was better than being out of the house and in danger. She was always at work. We stayed in the house and we were readers. And so in a way, I thank her for that. I also love Imani Perry. Imani Perry is a wonderful writer, and she has the ability to take history and translate it to story. And so that is where I'm getting my inspiration from. And of course, who can't love a good JSTOR article? Yeah. So this is, I have quite a few process videos in here, and this is just days of work. I will literally lock in, oh, okay, on this day, I will go through the archives and I will pull images in 2-3 days for me to pull archival images together. Some I might use, some I might not. They'll just sit in a folder. That's a part of the work. And then from there, this is just the process of how the image on the right is created. Clearly, I have a love of Photoshop. It is a tool, much like the camera. This piece is called In Conversation. It is my youngest daughter in conversation with an African tribe, and it really speaks to looking back and making connections, even from small. Yeah. I utilize a lot of different processes. If you've been to the museum, you can see such digital photographs, assemblage, cyanotype, embroidery. Now, I'm gonna ask y'all, because, yeah, I'm just talking. You have the option of seeing how I set up the studio, or we can carry on and I can just move to the next slide versus boring you with the dirty work of peeking behind the curtain. Okay, I was just making sure. You never know. Are they with you? Are they with you? Let's look at the dirty work. All right. So this is a typical studio setup. I've got my bounce for feel on this side. It's just two boards, and then I've got an Einstein Palsy buff light with a Photex soft lighter. This is I believe a 36-inch Photex, which has 2 layers of diffusion on it. This is my basement. Bigger studio space, of course, you can get a bigger light, but my studio space is relatively small, so I work with. Be prepared for a ceilings, so I work with what I have. It is sitting on a C-stand, and the C-stand allows me to move it around a little bit easier, and the C-stand on wheels. We've got the setup for the sitter. The light itself is typically going to be at a 45-degree angle as far as positioning, and I angle it slightly away from the sitter so that they're getting the edge of the light hitting them and not being blasted in the face. What that does is it's going to create some shadows on their skin and on their clothing, and it's also going to create highlights at the same time. And what the fill light will do is fill in those shadows on the side of them. And so it creates a lot more dimension than if the light was directly at them and filling in all the shadows. I also have another light back
Sorry,
here,
that's my daughter Zoe who was over it.
This light is acting as a light for the background, and it's acting as a hair light for the subject. And so that's a typical setup here. Let's go and look at editing. Yeah, it's so hard to find good help. It's just so hard. And so that's the same setup. There's a mirror there where she's reflecting back. Everything is positioned the same that you all just saw. And that's what I mean by you can make the skin glow. Am I dodging and burning? Oh, hours. Yes, anybody who knows photography and Photoshop, by all means, I'm dodging and burning. But the light like that gives me my base light, mids, and darks. Much like a painter, you need light, mids, and darks to create dimensionality. And so it's all very intentional in pushing those tones. And then I start playing around with layers because, yeah, layers are fun to manipulate. So, y'all still with me? So this is, like, my studio is in the basement. The ceilings, if I stand on a stool, clearly I can touch the ceiling, and it's about 10 feet long, maybe 14 if on a good day. And so I can set up 2 shooting bays. A typical setup, if I don't have it clear in my head, I'm gonna fiddle with it, and I'm gonna set my layers And my husband's gonna be like, hey, you done yet? You've been down here like 2 hours, 3 hours. I'm like, no, go away. I'm not done yet. Thank you so much for checking on me and making sure I eat. But I'm very much stepping back. I'm looking for, if my eyes read it as flat, the camera will read it as flat. And so in an effort to create dimension, I'm gonna keep adding layers of velvet, of fabrics, because I know what I'm looking for. Yeah. A little bit of floor, and then the image on the right is that final setup. Yeah. Oh, shoot. I'm out of place. Hold, please. Okay. All right. And so working with the sitter, I'm an army of one, literally and figuratively, because yeah, it's hard to find good help. Everything you see within my work, I'm doing it all, from styling to outfit acquisition, set design, props, whatever you see, that's me pulling it together. And so just a little bit of behind the scenes here of how all of that goes. And so on this particular shoot, you get to see what does it look like as far as the image, like in the set, behind the camera. That's the back of the camera. That's what it looked like. But then that's the work, right? And the thing about this particular piece, the young lady, she 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 was there. She was there, but she wasn't there. I know when it hits, and if you're an artist, you know what I mean when it hits, right? And her mother had brought in this spoon. This spoon was like her great grandmother's spoon. Just, hey, Tokie, this is what we brought for our artifact. And in the earlier components of the shoot, it was okay. But when her mom was like, oh, hey, I forgot, we got this. And I said, I don't know what your great grandmama is saying to you, honey, but tell her to keep talking to you. This piece is called We Come to Stir the Pot. And so it's this allusion to how Black girls in particular, you want them to be meek and docile, but that doesn't work. We have to teach them to be strong. They have to stir the pot. They have to not only stir the pot because they are the typical people who will make food, who will do for family, but they are also the ones who, in general, they will push. They will push the narrative, they will push politics, they will push their men. We push. So we come to stir the pot. 50 million layers later. Okay, no, not 50 million, maybe like 40. And so this is just a photograph of the layers that I'm using to create the piece. This is one of the earlier works in the body of work. And yeah, preparation of a seer. This was during COVID, and we had nothing else to do but go downstairs and make artwork. Yeah. I enjoy experimentation. This is a piece that is utilizing embroidery as well as the mother of pearl buttons. The narrative behind the mother of pearl buttons, within the research, I was reading this essay that was written about the Hermitage plantation and what they would find in the corners of where formerly enslaved individuals lived were these mother of pearl buttons. They would find bits of metal and iron. They would find bits of bone. And the speculation, because this is what we have, right? We have speculation of the ethnographers as well as myself, is that this was a means of holding on to their spiritual practice that they brought over with them. And a part of that spiritual practice is the belief that if you have an object or a bit of material from someone, you have the ability to control them. If not in the physical realm, then in the spiritual realm. So for me, buttons are power symbols. I think about these individuals who had no control over their lives, when they could eat, their children, their nothing. But they had at least hope that this practice of holding on to object could control the spiritual components and allow them either not to be beaten, not to lose their child, to be fed well. Whatever the hope was for that moment in time, it gave them hope. And I truly believe that is how you get out and how you come forward with the thinking of hope. Hope is what pulls you through. Yeah. So another process that I am clearly interested in is cyanotype. And cyanotype is a process where you're utilizing two chemicals where if they're separated, they do nothing. Yeah. But when you combine them together, they are now light sensitive. And then you coat them with your substrate and you expose them to the light, to sun, to UV rays, and you create an image. A lot of folks use botanicals. Clearly, I'm utilizing digital negatives. And in creating the cyanotypes, I love it because when you wash a cyanotype, the only thing that stays is the parts that are supposed to. If you did it right, everything else washes away. Only the important parts stay. And so for me, that is a little metaphor about my examination of history. I'm washing away, and what is supposed to stay is what remains. This particular piece, the artifact they brought in was this statuette. Their family's history and lineage is based in the military. And what they valued most was to bring in this representation of that. And so a part of spiritual practice is making offering. And so this young man, that was his offering to this lineage of the military that his family is involved in. So as I explained, with the cyanotype, whatever size you want that finished piece to be, the negative has to be that size. So in this case, with the prior piece, that was the negative for this piece. And I think that's Zoe behind the negative. So she's about 5'3". I think the negative was about 64 inches. So yeah, it's a little bit bigger than her. And I'll just, so that's the cyanotype fabric. And these are actually the pieces that are on the assemblage. That's one of the pieces that's on the assemblage in the museum, how it's made. I remember that show, how it's made.
All right, that's fine. Yeah. Okay. Okay, thank you.
So that first bath has a little bit of vinegar in it, just for contrast, and then you move it, and you just keep washing and agitating. It's the closest I probably am going to go back to the film process of creating images. Film is too many chemicals. I need to be in a complete dark room. Yeah, this is close enough. Oh no, that's not, there's another one that has the image that's in the gallery. That's this image that I'm watching. When they open back up, if there are students in the space or teachers, Penland School of Craft is an amazing residency. Go. Yeah, that's the one that's in the exhibition. Yeah. No, no. So, we're getting near the end, folks. I'm so happy y'all have stayed. Um, the next couple of images are, we took these today because when we walked into the space, we were blown away. Blown away, blown away. I just kept saying, wow, wow, wow. Like, that was the best word to use. Because I walked in and if you've been in the space, you're immediately met with these Renaissance, the centerpiece is that altarpiece. So, the placard said, small personal altarpiece from 1370. What? What? 1370. Let that sink in, folks. We are now in 2024. Something that was made in approximately 2022 is in conversation with something from 1370. And there's a piece on the wall in that space that I do believe I've seen in my art history textbook. So the gravity of that, the weight of that as not only an educator, not only as a lover of the arts, but as an artist, to be able to see a conversation that I'm having and that's something I've created existing in dialogue in such a way, wow, wow. Because these are images I would see in my art history book. What I would not see in my art history book, what I would not see in my art history book, that is wow. And then we have this ping pong dynamic between Lady in a Blue Dress and Conjure Woman, who has 12 panels, all connecting to the spirit. The panel here is, just because I'm reaching for it, right? Well, clearly there is a textile here. One of the family members brought in, it was their personal kente cloth that was made for their family. And so I took a photograph of that and turned that into the digital negative for this section here. And they're double paneled all the way around. No weapon formed against me shall prosper. That is the concept behind this piece. And she's literally surrounded by mother of pearl buttons, with mother of pearl buttons on her hands. The cowrie shell waist bead necklace with the mirror. I think at dinner we talked about the mirror and the importance of mirrors within the practice, and how mirrors are not only a way of seeing ourselves, they're this tiny little way, for me anyway, of time traveling. When you think about the light and how we actually see an image, it's light that is reflecting into the mirror and bouncing back, and it's light that went past and then forward. So it's a little means of time travel, of going in the past, in the present, and hopefully seeing a future, right? We have the feathers. And the feathers, for me, within the works, are always about, we're looking at flight, we're looking at freedom, and we're also looking at feathers are representative of wisdom and knowledge in African spiritual practice and culture. So yeah, to hold conversation in such a way is magical. This was today, y'all. This is the work. This is the work. To go to a museum space, and we talked earlier today about someone likes to ask, hey, do the kids understand what you're doing? I said, no, they're children. What? I'm not going to explain my research. Allow children to be children and just enjoy. Enjoy seeing themselves. We didn't stage this. I have no idea who this young lady is. We walked in, and I didn't even know, my good friend and artist, Grace, in the audience, happened to capture that. That's the work. It's not necessarily about the artist's intent. It is also about the interaction of those that visit the space and are made to feel welcome, or made to feel seen, or made to feel heard, that the space is also for them, that it is created for all, that all are valued and all are welcome. And I love the secondary shot as she sits and she reads. Yeah. I just love the dynamic. Grace, you're amazing. But this dynamic of the angle of looking, it's a conversation of looking. Girl, you see us over there in that corner. I see you too. Yeah. And then this painting by Morse. My mother would be proud. You learn about Morse code, right? Everybody, y'all learned about Morse code, yeah? You could never tell me a painting done by the person who invented Morse code would be in dialogue with something that I had created. And then we have the dynamic. We are all seen. And these are my final words. If you are out of ideas, they're not my words. If you are out of ideas, read. If you have ideas but can't articulate them, write. If you have ideas and have the clarity to execute, build. Danko. I think that encapsulates my process, my ideas, how I create. And I thank you all for allowing me to demonstrate that tonight. Thank you. Brief little shameless plug, Reclamation is the book that entails all of the images that were created from the body of work, as well as the essays that were written and the family stories. They are available here, or you can go to the website. Yeah, that's all I have. I think we're good on time, and we have time for questions.
Any questions from the audience?
Yes.
Where did you get the outfits for the portraits and things like that? Do you make them or?
No, I am not seamstress yet. But no, I source them from thrift stores, eBay. Sometimes parents are holding on to garments and they bring them in. Yeah, and then other times we're sourcing from eBay or Facebook Marketplace, the thrift store. And if they do that, sometimes they'll donate them to the studio, and other times the parents are like, no, this is now our artifact. We're having it framed, Tokie. And so it's just a really nice dynamic, yeah. The question was, where do I source outfits from? Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Great presentation. I run the risk, I guess, of sounding like the people that ask,
It's
sure to
okay.
understand. My question though is, related to the cotton, I guess, and
Mm-hmm.
some of your pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And so are you using that in real time, or are you photoshopping that in later?
The cotton's there.
The cotton's there. Okay.
Yeah.
And what do the parents say or think about that?
So before anyone is actually in front of a camera, we're holding dialogue about what my work is about, the intentionality, the messaging. I'm dealing with spirituality in the South. I was brought up Baptist, Southern Baptist. So I understand that those that might be interested because they're interested in having a free photo shoot, that ain't this. There's more to it than what's going on. So I'm very conscious about explaining what I'm investigating. As to the cotton narrative, if I'm examining history and I am looking at the fact that my grandmother picked cotton, my grandfather picked cotton, my great-grandmother, Miss Ellabelle, worked on a plantation picking cotton and did not go to school, who am I to ignore and to lower the value of their work and what they came through by eliminating it, and I'm examining the South. And so that's the conversation I have in context with cotton. Yeah. It is far more an examination than, oh, it's pretty. No. Yeah.
I did have a follow-up.
Of course.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. We here for it.
Are there any Black children that have been in your pieces that have grown up later and came back, and you had a conversation with them about the experience?
So this body of work was created between 2018 and 2022. The average age range is 4 through, within the full body of work, 15. And only one 15-year-old, and that's because she's a good family friend. But cutting her out, not to cut Layla out, but you're talking age 4 to age 10. So would I want, even my own daughter who lives with me, she's 12 now, are we holding those kinds of conversations? No, I really do mean I want children to be children. And their experience of the work at this age should be from the lens of I'm a child and I see myself. When they're older, yes, I think they will also appreciate the narrative that I'm having as an adult. But do I want an adult conversation imparted on a child? No, I think that's a part of our current cultural problem. Yeah, so, no problem. I appreciate the questions. Yes,
I wonder about your own family heirlooms.
yes,
There are pieces of your family that are
yes.
most important or inspiring to you.
So what gets utilized the most are things from my great-grandmother and from my grandmother. If they were from great-grandma, they're pretty much gonna be photographs that we're pulling in. But if it's from my granny has dementia. And so she's in a nursing home at this point, and we like to say, yes, she's physically here, but she's gone, absolutely gone. There's, bloop, gone. But what is still here are the items that she's handled, the items that she had a china cabinet, and the china cabinet I have, and she would keep all of these plates and whatnots in the china cabinet. She was a maid her entire life. She was a maid, and she worked for, my grandmother's words, she worked for the white lady. And the white lady would give her things that she didn't want anymore. So once again, we have this notion of other people's cast-offs become our treasured items, kept behind the china cabinet, protected. You are not allowed to handle them. Only Granny is allowed to handle them. Granddaddy is not allowed to handle them. My grandmother and her handling and in her preparation of food and serving, right? That energy and the handling of an object, it holds the memory, it holds the story. I just told the story, right, of the charger plates that were in the china cabinet that then get integrated into the pieces, I'm sure. Wait. Like, that's one of Granny's charger plates. Yeah, yeah. And you won't notice. That's the subtlety of it. There's another. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was eyeballs. That's Granny's charger plate. Yeah, yeah. Great question. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a
Yes.
question.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, as we saw through the presentation, like your meticulous attention to not only costumes, but also backgrounds, and we talked a little bit about Photoshop and how you're able to kind of create, um, you know, different types of backgrounds or, you know, through your setup and so forth in your videos. How much do you think that is a part of, like, the whole practice of creating portraits in general? Like, the idea of creating these kind of, you know, in your case, very sumptuous, in many cases, and very detailed, and very layered, you know, backgrounds and additions to, you know, the figures themselves.
For me, it creates complexity. It creates depth. Do I think it would have the same impact if it were your static gray or black paper background with the sitter posed in a chair? No. It very much is, I'm trying to create an illusion, a space that leans back in time, but there is no timeline. The goal is that they don't look like they're created in the present, and I don't feel like I can achieve that without the visual cues of layering of velvet and materials, because when you look back at your Renaissance paintings, there's the use of layering. There's a reason for that. It creates dimensionality and depth within the portrait. Yeah. Great.
During the process of taking photos and covers the movement after do you have a set of kind of poses in mind, or do you want the child just kind of look into the
That's also a really good question. So I get asked a similar question in that, Tokie, how are you getting kids to give you that? And so when you're asking me, what is the movement, or am I telling them XYZ? What I'm doing is setting out artifacts based on the conversations that I've had with their family, what they've brought in. If they weren't able to bring in anything, then I've already got identified artifacts that are sitting there. They're sitting on the table, they're sitting on the floor, and I let them get the smileys out. I'm waiting them out. Because at the end of the day, what kids have been, on purpose or not, encouraged to do is, hey, smile, there's a camera, smile. But if you let a kid just play, they're not, nobody's just sitting there smiling all the time, right? So I'm trying to get them past the I'm on phase to I'm investigating phase. And then they start picking up, they start examining, and then I'm, I'm, I'm snapping as I go, and I'll see some, oh, hey, can you do that again? Oh, hey, oh, that's perfect. Oh, just freeze right there. And whatever movement that they're in, just freeze tag, freeze. Okay, unfreeze. Keep playing. Oh yeah, would you like to play with this? Yeah. So that's the process of, and I'm not in a rush. I'm not, okay, 5 minutes, okay, bye. I'm not in a rush. Yeah. Yes.
I really appreciated the way you framed kind of moving in through the Crest Gallery, thinking about 14th century, the work of 14th century artists, the personal altar, and then in the gallery where your work is displayed, you know, your kind of, in a way, amazement at being displayed next to a work by Samuel Morse. But I'd like to kind of invert that, and I think, I can't imagine what Copley would think to be displayed next to your work. And no, in all seriousness, I mean, it's such an impossible thing to imagine, right? And I'll pick up on the word that Sean had used. I mean, Sean had used the sumptuousness of the fabrics and the materials that you use, the luster in there, I think relates so well to historical material and the qualities that artists, you know, going back for centuries, right, were very fascinated by. And I wonder, well, one more thing is just to say that I think that your work is so brilliant in that context because of your attention to those kinds of qualities. And I wonder if you could say a little bit more about your interest in those qualities.
In the sumptuousness.
Sumptuousness and luster, and things that actually resonate so well with historical materials.
So even with this piece, the original thought process was, if I were in West Africa, I would adorn. I am here. I will adorn. But we're looking at access. In the Western culture, what is the most popular adornment item? Then you have the use of pearls. But then I also start thinking to myself, the pearl is ideal because it speaks to this journey of crossing oceans and water and bodies of water to get to where we are. And so I don't know if that necessarily speaks to the luster of it, but it speaks to more of my concern of adornment based on access. What would I have had access to, all things being equal in the West, to adorn if we are all valued in the space? Yeah. I see 1 and 2. 1 and 2.
You said this body of work has been, what was it, 2018, 2022? So what are you working on now?
Okay, so the new body of work, similar umbrella in that I'm still looking at the spirit, I'm still looking at the physical, I'm still looking at history, but I'm looking at ethnobotany. And I'm looking at what are the botanicals that were utilized to heal, to sustain physically and spiritually. And so I'm looking at those botanical items, and as a part of that process, we go to the research. We go to, there's this book, and I'm gonna probably say it wrong, Ethnobotany in the African Diaspora. This is really thick book, but it's great. You just gotta sit and pull out the things that resonate. And then there's another essay, and I think it's in the book, but it's also a separate essay called Seeds of Memory, which is what the body of work winds up being called, Root Work, Seeds of Memory. And I'm thinking to myself, how can I create this visual? I don't grow plants. I'm a city girl. I'm not around the botanicals that I'm exploring, but I want this to be my direction. This is my pull. And so what I wound up doing is looking back at botanical illustrations from the 1700s and how they would illustrate these plants. And I pulled the botanical illustrations, and it became this dialogue and cross-pollination of these vintage botanical illustrations with the photograph. And then I challenged myself, okay, how can I utilize linen? How can I utilize silks, organzas, all of the surfaces are surfaces that aren't related to a photograph per se. And so how can I pull layering across from Photoshop or layering in creating the layers of fabric and artifact in person? How can I pull that back to the other side of it in the physical piece? So there's layering of embroidery, handmade papers, organza, and then it's also the base image is the same, but the base image gets cross-pollinated with the botanical illustration. It gets cross-pollinated with the material that I'm using and the technique that I'm using. So while each individual may have the same base image, much like a botanist cross-pollinating to create a new strand of a plant, that's what the work kind of does, in that each one of them is uniquely different, although they might have the same base image. So I'm really excited about that. I'm at the beginning. I've got 13 pieces that are made within it, but for me, it's the beginning because there's so much more runway to explore with that. Wonderful. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
One more and then.
Okay. Oh, yeah. I got you.
Love the metaphors and history. I'm just curious about a self-portrait of yourself.
No. It's not about me.
A self-portrait. I know you only do children, but I'm just thinking of your lineage. How do you see yourself reflected back in you?
Have you seen Zoe London Taylor? She's in a lot of the work, and so if the reflection back of me is through my children, I'm perfectly happy with that. Yeah, I don't need to be. I'm good. I did see your hand, and that could be our last question.
Okay, you mentioned being interested in creating an illusion of your sitters being in a period of time that's not today. How do you see photography as a very modern medium as opposed to 1300s or something like that, Photoshop and the work with the digital camera? Does that ever, do you feel like that ever disrupts that illusion that you're going for?
No, it's how it's made. No, I absolutely do not think it is breaking the third wall per se. I can't remember. Acting's been a long time ago in high school, but I don't think it disrupts it at all. It allows for it the way I'm doing it. I know, quote mark, straight photography is very documentational. It is capturing what people see. I'm not in that camp. I'm using the photograph as a base for me to create the message and idea I have in my head. Yeah.
Let's thank Tokie.